Picture this. An unsigned letter circulates in the dim lantern light of an army camp. It urges the officers not to wait for justice, but to demand it, to act before they lay down their arms. And for the first time in the American experiment, a question hangs in the air. Will the army obey Congress or confront it? The war was almost over, but the Republic nearly broke. The winter of 1782 into 83 was the last of the war. Yorktown had been won, the British were preparing to withdraw, and Congress had begun peace negotiations. But the army was still camped in the freezing hills above the Hudson River. They were tired and bitter and unpaid. 3 years earlier, Congress had promised officers half pay for life in return for their service. But that promise had become tangled in budget crises and state politics. Under the Articles of Confederation, Congress had no power to tax and no steady revenue, just pleas. So, by 1782, Superintendent of Finance Robert Morris had stopped all regular pay. Officers sold their IOUs for pennies, and soldiers threatened desertion. That's what Alexander Hamilton warned Washington from Philadelphia. He suggested channeling the Army's anger toward a larger goal: a national funding, a permanent revenue system, a true federal union. The frustration was real, but the fuse was about to be lit. Because on March 10th, 1783, an anonymous circular swept through the officers' tents. It was unsigned, and unofficial, and bold. It declared that Congress could not be trusted, that if the officers didn't stand together now, they might lose everything. It asked them to meet outside the chain of command, and it included one unforgettable line: carry your appeal from the justice to the fears of government. The address was almost certainly written by John Armstrong, Jr., who was the aide to Major General Horatio Gates, Washington's longtime rival. And just 2 days later, a second anonymous letter appeared, this one doubling down. Quote, "If you have sense enough to discover your duty and spirit sufficient to act," unquote. The message was clear. The Army's patience was over. Quick side note, if you're drawn to these moments when history balances on a knife's edge, consider joining the Keep It Gifted Fund at dancoyle.com. It's pay what you wish, and it keeps this kind of storytelling free and gifted for all. Or just share this video. It makes a huge difference. Okay, back to the story. So Washington responded with swift control. On March 11th, he issued general orders condemning the unauthorized meeting. He canceled it and called for a new one. Same time, same place, but this time it would be under his authority. On March 15th, the officers gathered in the Temple of Virtue, a plain wooden hall at the New Windsor encampment. Major General Gates opened the meeting. Then, unexpectedly, Washington entered. He stood quietly. Then he began to speak. "By an anonymous summons, an attempt has been made to convene you together. How inconsistent with the rules of propriety. How unmilitary. And how subversive of all order and discipline." He reminded them of everything they'd fought for, and warned what they'd lose if they turned against civilian control. Whoever attempts to open the floodgates of civil discord and deluge our rising empire in blood will be the guilty author of its ruin. Then came the moment that changed everything. Washington pulled out a letter from a congressman. He hesitated, squinting, and then reached into his coat and pulled out a pair of spectacles. Most of the officers had never seen him wear them. Washington said, "Gentlemen, you will permit me to put on my spectacles. For I have not only grown gray, but almost blind in the service of my country." And with that, the room broke. The anger dissolved, and some of the men cried. The officers voted immediately. They condemned the anonymous letters as disorderly and unmilitary, and they declared their abhorrence and disdain for the idea of military intimidation. And they pledged their unshaken confidence in Congress and in Washington. And just 1 week later, on March 22nd, Congress responded. They passed the commutation plan. Instead of half pay for life, officers would receive 5 years full pay in the form of interest-bearing securities. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. And more than that, it showed what Washington's intervention had preserved: a system of law, not pressure, and trust, not threat. Another quick plug here: everything I make is freely given. There's no paywalls, no ads, and if this story moved you, I want you to visit dancoyle.com or join the Patreon, where there's over 30 more pieces of content that you wouldn't have ever seen or heard before. You'll help keep the history alive for others who might need it in the near future. Back to the story. So the Newburgh Conspiracy didn't erupt into violence, after all, but it exposed something fragile: that the Articles of Confederation were too weak to hold the nation together. So a few months later, Washington wrote a circular to the states, and in it, he listed the 4 things he believed the country needed to survive: an indissoluble union under one federal head, a sacred regard to public justice, a proper peace establishment, and the prevalence of a friendly and pacific disposition. And then he warned, unless the states delegate a larger proportion of power to Congress, the bonds of union may crumble. Newburgh wasn't just about pay, it was about power. Without the ability to fund an army, or honor promises, or enforce national law, Congress really couldn't govern. So Newburgh helped catalyze a movement, one that led to Philadelphia in 1787, and to the Constitution, and ultimately to a stronger union. But it also left behind a model, a moment where a man with supreme popularity chose restraint, where persuasion beat force, and where principle held the line. At Newburgh, no bullets were fired, no orders were disobeyed, but everything could have changed. A fledgling republic stood at the edge, and it was saved not by law or threat, but by trust, by character. Washington didn't grab power, as he wouldn't do later after his presidency of 8 years. He gave it back. He reached for his spectacles, and he gave his country another chance. So I'll leave you with this. What do you do when pressure rises and trust collapses? What do you believe in when fear is louder than justice? And what kind of power do we pass on when we choose not to use it? If this video helps you reflect, please share it. And if you want to support more of this work, visit dancoyle.com, join the Keep It Gifted Fund, join us on Patreon or on Substack. Those are all unpaywalled, though you can choose to contribute if you want. And if you have thoughts, drop them in the comments, and we can keep the conversation going. Thanks.